What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, July 25th, 2018, getting on toward the end of the month, almost into August here. Summer is well and truly upon us. We have a lot to talk about today. It's a very busy news day, so let's get into it. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phone, put you on the air with your comments and questions. So getting right into it. Following Trump's meeting with Putin in Helsinki, the deep state apparently smells blood. The whole Mueller investigation thing is falling apart. The Carter-Page visa documents are a major embarrassment. Now they're just trying to make an issue over the fact that Trump met with Putin privately, even though previous presidents and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton all did exactly the same thing and did not get attacked for it. But you've got all these people, all these corporate media prostitutes and correspondents from both sides, left and right, are condemning the president over his press conference with Vladimir Putin. And you've got these deep state people just leading the charge. John McCain, former Obama CIA boss John Brennan. It's just nuts. And you have to wonder, what is going on? I mean, he's given the deep state almost everything they want. He's trying to close the borders, but he's giving them all the wars they want, except obviously, of course, if relations with Russia calm down, the military-industrial complex will lose money because we won't always be arming up. There won't be an arms race. And again, as we pointed out yesterday, every president who's tried to normalize relations with first the Soviet Union and later the Russian republics has been denounced as a traitor and attacked. And this is all driven by the greed of the military-industrial complex. Now, former Secret Service agent Bongino was out there on Fox News basically saying that this Russia probe is the biggest scam in modern U.S. history. And I'm not sure it's the biggest. It's one of the biggest. I would also put the Pearl Harbor and 9/11 deceptions up there as well. But it's a big scam. It really is a big scam. Now, Trey Gowdy has come on out, and sometimes you have to admire her sense of humor. He's saying after 18 months, there is no evidence of Russian collusion. And then he went on to say, if there had been any such evidence, we would have seen it because it would have been leaked by now. And that is a reference to the fact that Trump's White House is plagued by leaks, just all kinds of leaks of information getting on out to the media. And it's one of the reasons why Trump is looking at revoking security clearances for these former Obama officials, because they may be the leaks. They are still able to get on in and see this classified information, even though they're not in government service any longer. Now, Carter-Page is saying that the Clinton campaign was spreading rumors of Russian collusion months before that bogus dossier was manufactured and surfaced. And he was saying that in July of 2016, 2 months before the Yahoo News article came out about the dossier, he started getting these calls from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, all asking about these same two names of people he's never even heard of. So this was obviously a coordinated leak trying to get the media on him. And even though they couldn't find anything, they ginned up that visa document and they spied on him anyway. Now, two House Republican chairmen are calling on the Trump Justice Department to fully unredact the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act applications the FBI used to get surveillance warrants on Carter-Page. And this is Goodlatte, who's chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and Devin Nunes. But the damage has already been done. I mean, there may be more revelations in there, but what we've already seen discredits the whole thing. It was a setup. It was a hoax. It was a frame-up to try and smear Donald Trump, because that's all they've got on him, is smearing him. He hasn't done anything. Former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarthy who initially was defending the FBI and basically said anybody who thought there was any kind of funny business going on was just wacko. He's now basically reversed course and effectively said they were right and I was wrong. And it says, yeah, there's a rogue FBI. There's been deliberate abuse and misleading of the FISA court. So it's all starting to come out. And our job as part of the independent media, and you are all part of the independent media, is to keep it getting on out there. This is the stuff you have to be sharing with your friends right now. This is a Watergate scale scandal. In fact, it's already worse than Watergate was. The U.S. government, the previous administration, the opposing candidate, all using U.S. government intelligence agencies to spy on Donald Trump. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. So basically, Judicial Watch is finally starting to receive more of the documents related to this FISA case. And these documents were requested more than a year ago under the Freedom of Information Act. Then they had to go to court and just fight to get it. But the warrant revelations reveal how Obama's deep state basically weaponized the government to illegally spy on its political opponents. That's Nixon territory right there. Now, Rob Meadows is saying that Rod Rosenstein should not be part of this investigation because he signed that FISA application. That makes him a witness. So Freedom Caucus Chairman Mark Meadows called Rosenstein a witness and said he should recuse himself immediately. And Rosenstein is turning out to be an interesting character because it was his letter to Donald Trump that led Donald Trump to fire James Comey. Then Rosenstein turns around and tells Mueller to investigate Trump for firing Comey. That's how twisted this is. Now, there's an interesting article. This one came out of amgreatness.com. Just how far will the left go? And it starts out talking about how Trump never got his traditional presidential honeymoon. And over the last 18 months, the Democrats have tried to overturn Trump's victory. They tried to sue. First, they tried to claim the election was rigged, even though Obama said it was impossible to rig the election. And by the way, the election was rigged, just in the other way. Then they sought to subvert the Electoral College by bullying electors into renouncing their respective states' votes. And there were massive protests and boycotts of the inauguration, articles of impeachment introduced on the House with no factual basis whatsoever. Some sued to remove Trump on a warped interpretation of the emoluments clause of the Constitution. Others were bringing in psychiatrists to testify Trump was mentally ill and should be removed under the 25th Amendment. The former FBI director, CIA director, and director of the Office of National Intelligence have smeared Trump as a coward, a traitor, and a Russian mole, especially that last one. So we're about 430 days into Mueller's investigation. They haven't found anything. And you can tell the desperation is growing. What are they going to try next? How far are they ready to go? Which gets me to this story, and we've seen so many like it, about people who are just coming on out and just openly calling for the death of Donald Trump. And some of them have been talked to by the Secret Service, but there seem to be so many of them. And apparently over at the Denver Post, they actually ran a letter to the editor saying that Donald Trump ought to be executed. And Trump was compared to the Rosenbergs and said if it walks like a traitor and talks like a traitor and acts like a traitor, it's a traitor. Now, I have a concern. I'm old enough to remember the John F. Kennedy assassination, and it just shocked the nation. And it got everybody just saying, you know, what happened led to the Warren Commission cover-up and so forth. I'm concerned that all of this media coverage of people saying Trump should be killed is an effort to desensitize us all to that possibility, so that if the deep state decides to take Trump out, the American people's attitude will be, well, we kind of saw that one coming. Everybody was talking about it. And I think that's the reason so many people are coming on out and saying these horrible, horrible things. It's a desensitization campaign. All right, let's take a phone call. George in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Mike? You know, when I was in the military, when we had security clearances, those security clearances expired the moment we left the service. We had our out briefing and we left, and, you know, I still keep my mouth shut to this day.
I went through...
It was medical record.
Yeah, I went through exactly the same thing with NASA. At one point, I was involved in a classified project, and I had a clearance, and, you know, I did the job. And then when the job was over, the security clearance was revoked. I surrendered all the materials. I went through the out briefing, and that was it. End of story.
Same thing with these bureaucrats. As soon as they left office, their security clearances should have been expired with them. I mean, could you look at people maintain their security clearances? You look at Sandy Berger, who went into the National Archives and took something out and put it in his shoe. Had a security clearance. You know, it's like all these abuses. You know, I think their security clearances should have expired when they left their post. And if they're going to be in a consultant role, they should have a temporary clearance until they're not needed and it's revoked.
Yeah, I agree. Or if not revoked, at least temporarily put on hold. Because the big issue here that seems to be bothering the Trump White House is that these people are all his enemies. And Trump is plagued by leaks, and whoever's doing the leaking seems to have access to classified information. So he's got to shut it all off right now.
But personally, I think, like as far as like Mueller and all them, I think, you know, and the special counsel sitting there spying on Manafort's conversations with his attorney. He should get the cup slapped on him and disbarred. Because, you know, violating the right of attorney-client is very sacred.
You're absolutely right here. But this whole operation has been one criminal enterprise. There's nothing legitimate or legal about it. It is a criminal enterprise that was taking place underneath the Obama administration and involved Department of Justice and FBI and other players as well. It was a criminal operation. Everything they did was illegal. They tried to make it look legal with that FISA warrant, and now we're finding out that was obtained under fraudulent pretexts.
Well, personally, you know, I think the Department of Justice and the FBI should be dismantled. And I just think the U.S. Marshals should take over what the FBI and the Department of Justice done. I mean, they're smaller, you know, and I think they'd be more effective.
Well, I think it's certainly possible to do that and turn over law enforcement and, you know, back to the states, which is how it was originally. When this country was started, there was no FBI, there was no Department of Justice. The states had all the authority. They did their own police forces, they did their own investigations, and they had their own court system. And this imposed from above federal system is very often used to override and abuse the rights of the separate states.
Yeah, just like, you know, I just think federal jurisdiction, if it's going across multiple state lines, then I think there's federal jurisdiction. But
yeah, that's generally the rule. That's generally the rule. But, you know, I think the Department of Justice could be made a lot smaller and simpler. Same thing with the FBI. The problem isn't the entire FBI and the entire Department of Justice. It is these people at the very top who have gotten to the top through connections and corruption and willingness to go along and make a deal. And so they're anointed ones, they're untouchables. Those are the ones that have to be gotten rid of.
Yes. All right, Mike, I'll let you get back to your show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and thank you for the phone call. Now, to show you just how petty the Democrats, snowflakes, have become, somebody took a pickaxe to Donald Trump's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, just obliterated it. And the star goes back to his show The Apprentice, and they have arrested a suspect. But I'll let you in on a little secret. Having worked in Hollywood, those stars get damaged on a pretty regular basis, usually by accident. And the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, they will replace it, and rather quickly, too. Now, they're still trying to make a big deal over this Playboy Playmate of the Year. And apparently, the FBI acquired a tape made by former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, where they were talking about a deal. Now, everybody's been saying it was hush money, hush money, hush money. If you listen to the actual tape, basically, it turns out this Playmate was marketing her story of her affair with Donald Trump. And basically, Trump and his lawyer were going to go into the bidding and outbid all the other interested parties in order to control that. Now, that might be interpreted very loosely as hushing up the story, but it's hardly the first time that rights to a story have been purchased in order to make sure it doesn't get out. It happens all the time in Hollywood with really controversial screenplays and stuff. It almost happened with Orson Welles' Citizen Kane. So nothing new about that. But apparently, there's nothing illegal in the tape. Trump didn't do anything that he could possibly be prosecuted for, let alone impeached, but they're still trying to pound on. It does make him look bad. He was fooling around on his wife, something I don't agree with. But 50% of everybody in America steps out on their marriage at one point or another. That's the statistic. And I'm not making excuses for Donald Trump. I'm just saying they're trying to make a mountain out of a relatively small molehill. Getting on back to the call that we had from George, GOP Senator James Lankford is out there saying there is no reason for somebody out of the administration to still have access to classified information. One thing that concerns me is that list of people who may lose their security clearances does not include Hillary Clinton. And it should. She's not in government service anymore. She's not Secretary of State anymore. She is potentially a competitor for the White House against Trump in 2020, and her security clearance ought to be revoked as well. Okay, now, man, losing my hair so fast. We mentioned this before, but we're going to mention it again. Last Thursday, Eugene Robinson, who's a writer for the Washington Post, published a column criticizing Trump for failing to just automatically believe what the U.S. intelligence community was saying about Russian meddling in the 2016 election. And basically, it was a puff piece. You know, the intelligence, they always get it right. No, they don't. No, they don't. And I've decided to share a little bit of history with you. In April 1961 was the Bay of Pigs invasion. This was a CIA-planned effort by Cuban exiles to overthrow Fidel Castro's regime and replace it with a non-communist, U.S.-friendly government. And it went horribly awry, and it turned out to be a disaster which has poisoned U.S.-Cuban relations, because prior to that, Fidel Castro really was trying to establish friendly relations with the United States. And it was only because the United States' attitude of, we don't want you there, we're going to get somebody else, that actually forced Cuba to seek a relationship with the Soviet Union. And the CIA basically lied to Kennedy. They told him the Cuban people were going to join on in. That didn't happen. They showed false documents to trying to get U.S. military support, which Kennedy had already indicated he was not going to do that. This was not going to be an official U.S. invasion of Cuba. Anyway, we got to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And yes, one more time, we have to hold our hands out. Republic Broadcasting needs your help. So does What Really Happened. We have to be constantly replacing this equipment. It does wear out. It burns out. We have to pay costs of the servers, and we do need your help, because our advertisers are being harassed and are being threatened, literally. So the postal address where you can send a donation, check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Road, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number to call in with a debit or credit card donation or to pledge to be a recurring subscriber is 800-724-2719, extension 1 during normal business hours, extension 3 at all other times. So we're going through a little bit of history where there are plenty of reasons for Donald Trump to be very cautious about what he's getting from the intelligence agencies. Despite the comment from the Washington Post, how dare you not immediately side with the intelligence agencies when they say that Russia is mucking around with our elections here. Back in 1968, there was the Tet Offensive, where North Vietnam's forces stunned the United States by this massive coordinated assault against South Vietnam. Now, even though ultimately the gains were fleeting, it was the most decisive battle of Vietnam. In fact, its real effect was it disillusioned Americans with the war and really provided impetus to the anti-war movement here. And afterwards, they did an inquiry and discovered that U.S. and South Vietnamese military officers and intelligence analysts had failed to fully anticipate the intensity, coordination, and timing of the enemy attack despite multiple warnings. Then there was the Yom Kippur War, which this was in 1973, when the CIA was caught flat-footed when Egyptian and Syrian forces launched attacks on Israel. They missed that one. And basically, what happened was that Israeli intelligence believed the country's superior military power would deter its Arab neighbors from initiating a war, and the U.S. intelligence officials just went along with the groupthink. Just went along with the groupthink. All right, the Iranian Revolution, they missed that one. 6 months before the Iranian Revolution happened, the CIA concluded Iran is not in a revolutionary or even a pre-revolutionary situation. And of course, 6 months later, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini basically rose to power in the Islamic Revolution of 1979, opening up a rift between Iran and the United States that persists to this day. That's a big part of what the push to go back into Iran is all about. The U.S. government carries a grudge. They're still carrying a grudge against Cuba. They're carrying a grudge against Iran because they had conquered Iran all the way back in 1953, and then in 1979, those gosh darn Iranian people, they just took their country back. Well, you're not allowed to do that. Once you're a member of the American empire, you will stay there and you will like it. But again, the CIA, literally 6 months before it happened, said, no, not going to happen here. Then there was the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, where the U.S. intelligence community basically thought that the costs of the quagmire would deter the Soviets from invading Afghanistan. And apparently, in the days after the invasion, there was a joke running around the agency. The analysts got it right. It was the Soviets who got it wrong. Now, the only reason the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan in the first place is the U.S. was already in there, trying to do their own regime change, which they're still trying to do all these years later. The U.S. intelligence agencies missed the impending collapse of the Soviet Union. And basically that one came down to the fact that the administration of Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, they had preconceived notions regarding the Soviet threat. And again, the intelligence community just went along with the groupthink. Well, if the president is saying the Soviet Union is a mighty threat, then by golly, that's what it's going to be. The CIA completely missed India's nuclear test in May of 1998. And in fact, the intelligence analysts responsible for tracking India's nuclear program didn't get the data until the day after the test had actually happened. Then there was the Iraq War and their insistence that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. He had germs, he had chemicals, he had nuclear weapons. Now, that may not be a mistake. That one, I think, along with Pearl Harbor and 9/11, was a deliberate lie. But I'm going to put it on the list anyway. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And just one more example of why Donald Trump would be wise to not just accept anything he's being told by the intelligence agencies. In August of 1941, a British double agent, Dusko Popov, codenamed Tricycle, handed the FBI a copy of Japan's complete plan for the attack on Pearl Harbor. And the FBI said, nah, it's too much detail here. This has got to be a hoax. Now, maybe the FBI was aware that Roosevelt wanted the attack to happen. But again, intelligence agencies have lied to presidents. They lied to Kennedy at the Bay of Pigs. So, alrighty, getting on to more news. Mike Krieger is out there with an interesting question. Are establishment Democrats trying to lose? And his point isn't that they're really trying to lose, but the fact that they're continuing to try and oppose Donald Trump and win elections with the same tired, old, exhausted group of people. And that they'd rather lose to Donald Trump with somebody like Hillary Clinton than win with somebody like Bernie Sanders or, for example, Tulsi Gabbard, who, even though she is not a supporter of the Second Amendment, I think she would make a good candidate here. Now, Democrats on Capitol Hill are refusing to meet with Supreme Court nominee Cavanaugh. They're claiming scheduling conflicts. And this is just obstructionism and delay. They don't want to come to a vote. They're going to try and drag this out until after November in the hope that Democrats will have control of the House and Senate and they can vote down the nomination. So it seems like the federal government is spending all their time either fighting with each other or fighting with the rest of the world. No wonder our country is going downhill. Now, Maxine Waters is out there trying to recover from the negative publicity surrounding her call to action at that speech that liberals should get in the face of conservatives, harass them at restaurants and things like that. And so apparently over at this church where she was giving a speech, she came on out and basically claimed God sent her to Earth to stop Donald Trump. Then apparently a suspicious package was left at the South Los Angeles office of Representative Maxine Waters yesterday, and it was labeled anthrax with a space between it, and portions of the building were evacuated. Hazmat investigated. The package was completely safe. Maybe somebody is just giving Maxine Waters a taste of her own medicine, or it's Maxine Waters herself trying to regain sympathy and victimhood status. And I tend to think it's more likely the latter one. Eric Holder is dropping hints that he may step into the 2020 election campaign, and he's going to make a final decision sometime early next year. But he's already out there talking to potential donors. He was on Stephen Colbert and said, yes, he's seriously considering running for president of the United States. Well, if in fact Hillary is stepping back in, it's very dangerous for any other Democrats to get in the race. I mean, first of all, look what they did to Bernie Sanders. Because if you think the Democrats are going to learn any lessons from 2016 and run an honest campaign and an honest primary, of course they won't. I think it was Nancy Pelosi who was out there saying it was perfectly acceptable for the Democratic National Committee to rig the primaries for their chosen candidate, which undermines the whole point of having a primary. If the committee is just going to pick the candidate, why spend the money on a primary election? Now, this could be just a coincidence, but a lot of people are scratching their heads because the cardiologist who recently treated former President George Herbert Walker Bush was shot dead while riding his bicycle on South Main Street near Texas Children's Pavilion for Women in Houston. And he was reportedly northbound on his way to work when the shooter, also riding a bicycle and heading south, pulled out a firearm and shot him twice. And they're trying to say, was it really intentional or if it was random road rage? Now, I saw the video. The whole thing was caught on security camera, not enough to identify the shooter. But the roads were open. Traffic was light. No reason for there to be road rage. So my opinion, false, it was intentional. Was it related to Bush? No way to know. Getting into the war zones now, 2 districts in southeastern Afghanistan have basically been taken over by the Taliban on the border with Pakistan, and heavy fighting is continuing across Afghanistan. We're still stuck there. We're still pouring all kinds of money and people in there, and we're not doing really well. Putin's got to be laughing his rear end off about this right now. The U.S. has walked into the same quagmire the Soviet Union did. Not to mention earlier empires like the British. There is a reason Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires. In fact, the last military commander to totally conquer Afghanistan and to hang on to it was Alexander the Great, and he only kept it for 3 years. So apparently, the Taliban have taken a series of district centers this year, many of which have been subsequently retaken by Afghan security forces, which control areas with around 2/3 the country's population. But we're getting an oil pipeline right away and all that wonderful opium, so that makes it all worthwhile here. Now, Syria has come on out and said their investigation of the incident involving Israel shooting down of their Sukhoi aircraft shows that the Sukhoi was targeted while it was still well within Syrian airspace. And it wasn't flying toward Israel in a threatening manner. In fact, it was busy bombing ISIS terrorists. And that Israel was clearly trying to protect their allies in ISIS. A lot of people have commented, ISIS is supposed to be this horrible Muslim terrorist group that beheads people. They were going all over doing all these bloody things, but they never once attacked Israel or an Israeli. And now we know why. They were part of it here. Now, Israel has a propaganda trick that they play from time to time, and that is to claim that an agreement with some entity has been made and then to push the entity to stick to a deal it never really agreed to in the first place. Now, Israel dislikes any Iranian presence in Syria, and it's trying to push on Russia to get Iran out of Syria. And last fall, a campaign in Israeli media claimed that Russia had agreed to push Iran out of away from the border with Israel. Russia denied that anything like that happened. Iranian forces in Syria are legitimately there. In late May, Israel mounted a similar campaign saying that the Russian foreign minister had agreed to move Iran out of Syria when in fact he had called on the U.S. forces to leave. And now Israel has tried to do it again. At this point, I think it's pretty clear that Syria's future is in Russian hands. Not U.S. hands, Russian hands. The U.S. lost this one. They're not going to admit it. They're going to spin it as some kind of a moral, philosophical victory. But the actual goal of this war in Syria was to oust Assad and put in a pro-U.S. government who would be friendly to Israel and U.S. oil interests. Didn't happen. And now Russia's come on in. Syria is beholding to Russia. Russia is obviously going to exploit the situation being in Syria. They're going to want concessions. They're going to offer the financing for the rebuilding. They're going to have their companies come on in to do the rebuilding. They're going to make the profit off the war. All right, let's take a phone call. Paul in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Michael.
Hi.
Michael, when we talk about, our intelligence communities and why much of the world may know about things that very few Americans know about, you should keep in mind that the United States, helped Saddam Hussein back in the 80s under Ronald Reagan get chemical weapons.
Yep.
Particularly, we sent what are called chemical precursors to help them make mustard gas and sarin. And we also helped, what?
They also sent biological weapons, including 20 different strains of anthrax, with the goal that Saddam was going to use it on Iran.
And we knowing when he was using the chemical weapons on Iran, America provided intelligence. I think that's probably the CIA who might have helped with this, Michael?
That would be the agency I would expect to be involved.
Yeah, and notice the same agency for all these years under Obama with their drones. Notice they never seem to ever target a heroin shipment coming out of Afghanistan.
Yeah, funny how that works.
For some reason, weddings they can do.
Yeah.
But a heroin shipment they can't do.
No.
Notice? By the way, the same intelligence community that sat there while the Secretary of State, the second most important person in the U.S. government, in my opinion, Hillary Clinton, had an insecure server, and those very intelligent people over at the CIA didn't test her server or make sure or look into her behavior using a private server and let it go on for years and years and did nothing about it. That's CIA?
Yep.
Those dummies?
Also FBI and NSA who would have had also jurisdiction.
And they just sat there, these very intelligent, highly paid public servants of ours. They did or knew nothing about that the whole time. It's just uncanny. But just to wrap up what I was saying, the United States also helped provide logistics and targeting to the Iraqis and told them where the Iranian troop movements were happening. And so we helped Saddam Hussein use chemical weapons. Those are also known as weapons of mass destruction, Michael,
yes.
Aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah. And most Americans are oblivious to these facts. And that's why, Michael, I would love to see you have a public debate with John Brennan. I really would. And to see, really, CNN, why don't you have Michael on the show with John Brennan, sit him down for an hour-long debate, and let's discuss the CIA stuff. Let's bring it out to the public. Nothing is better than the light and to illuminate the viewers over at CNN of what these great, hallowed intelligence agencies do for the United States.
Oh, Paul, you have such a sense of humor.
I think you're the man. I put you right up front, right? I'd be tuning in.
Thank you for the compliment. Thank you for the compliment. It's never going to happen. Brennan is not the debating kind, and CNN is just totally on board with the deep state. Now, unfortunately, apparently they've pulled what little independence Fox News still had, has been offered up in the altar of the Rupert Murdoch plan to buy Sky News.
Yes, but I do urge your listeners to just go over there to Google and to do or maybe DuckDuckGo or some of the other ones, and do a little search, and look into it. Look into what our intelligence agencies have done for the American people, really serving our interests, making friends and peace, and spreading democracy throughout the world.
Yep. Absolutely.
And on that note, sir, thank you.
All right, well, that's our job as the independent media. We have to inform the American public in the face of a government and corporate media that is working very hard to keep us all ignorant and so far failing. More about that later. So thank you for the phone call.
They're not keeping us ignorant. All right, sir. Thank you.
All right. All right. Now, Russia's defense minister Sergei Shoigu said on yesterday, Moscow would respond if Sweden and Finland were drawn into the NATO alliance and that such expansion would undermine global security. This according to Interfax. Now, back in 1990, Mikhail Gorbachev was given promises by NATO and the United States that NATO would not expand eastward past its present border, which was at the edge of East Germany at that point, or what had been East Germany. And so obviously, Russia has a reason to view all these other countries being brought into NATO as a violation of that agreement, that bit by bit, NATO is gobbling up countries and getting closer and closer to the Russian border. And that is making NATO, Russia, very, very nervous, especially in the face of a NATO which has been involved in so many of the U.S. aggressions over the last 17 years here. Now, American lawmakers have allocated some $200 million in aid for Ukraine in the 2019 defense budget. And Washington is trying to paint itself as a dominant global figure. That's why they're throwing all this money around. This is from International Affairs, Mike Sloboda in Sputnik magazine. And he's got a point. The U.S. is still trying to prove they're in charge, they're the dominant global power, using warfare, money, sanctions, tariffs, and so forth. But there may be another analogy there. And this is something that is very, very common. When you have somebody who is losing all their money and they know they're going to go bankrupt shortly, they'll grab all their cash and they'll just start spending like crazy, go on a final spending binge. And that may be what's happening here, because the U.S. just doesn't have this money to keep up this kind of largesse to all these countries around the world. Apparently, part of this new Ukrainian gift is going to be Javelin anti-tank missile systems. The U.S. has signed a new contract for more of these missile systems, and some of them will be going to Ukraine, others will be going to other countries. So here you have the U.S. basically buying all these weapons and handing to all the other countries. Over in Yemen, the Saudi coalition targeted the Shearwater facility in Yemen's northwestern city of Sudah, cutting off 10,500 people, including over 5,000 children, from safe drinking water. This is being reported by the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF. And this has been the third attack on the facility since this March. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking about how the Saudi coalition has, for the third time, bombed the Shearwater facility in Yemen's northwest, cutting off 10,500 people from safe drinking water. UNICEF is out there saying this is completely unacceptable. In fact, it is a war crime. All right, let's grab ourselves a phone call. Bob in the Upper Peninsula, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Michael.
Yes.
I think a lot of people in this country, they really don't understand what happened in World War II. It was the Russians that actually did all the heavy lifting and the heavy fighting against Germany. And if it wouldn't have been for their efforts, I think, sir, that the U.S. and Britain would not have beat Hitler.
Well, Britain, no, but remember the U.S. was already developing a nuclear weapon.
Well, correct. But so was Germany.
Germany actually never got that far along with their program.
Well, in any event, it was the Russians turned back the Germans in the conventional war at Stalingrad early in 1902, and they were pushing toward the English Channel for 2 years, and we didn't go in, as we're taught, to save the whole European continent. Actually, it was, if we didn't go in, Stalin would have pushed right to the Atlantic and picked up all the marbles.
Quite probably, yes. But on the other hand, Roosevelt and Stalin actually saw eye to eye. But in the end, by the time the United States did come in, through the Pearl Harbor subterfuge, you're right. Russia had already pretty much broken the back of the German military. And was one of the reasons why Germany started trying to build these wonder weapons that would turn the course of the war around, because they knew they were losing. They knew they were losing when they got kicked out of Africa. They knew that they were losing when they got driven back from Moscow. So, yeah, it was close. It was very, very close. Very, very dicey.
Yeah, the thing that I'm trying to point out here is that a lot of the American public today don't understand the efforts of the Russian military to push the victory in World War II to our side.
Well, Russia lost millions, tens of millions of people in World War II. They lost far more people than were alleged to have died in the Nazi slave labor camps.
Absolutely.
All right, well, Bob, I got to let you go. Bob, I'm sorry, got to let you go. We got to do a station identification, and we'll be back with hour number 2 after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And sadly, over in Israel, Gaza, the ceasefire has not held. Apparently, somebody took a couple of shots at the IDF soldiers near the Gaza border, and Israel went right on in and started bombing Gaza yet again. And I seriously doubt Hamas would have done something this dumb because of the expectation of a disproportionate response. I would not be surprised if an Israeli agent provocateur was pulling the trigger, because apparently none of the IDF soldiers were actually hit. Now, a couple of days ago, there was a story where Israel had tried out its brand new David Slings air defense system on 2 missiles flying over Syria that Israel said appeared to possibly be flying errantly and therefore posed a problem to Israel. And they fired the David Slings missiles at it. Neither one connected. Today, apparently, the Israeli army hit the launcher inside Syria that fired those rockets. So, at some point, somebody's just going to say, enough is enough. It's time to fight back here. Meanwhile, over in the Jabal al-Baba Bedouin Palestinian community, southeast of occupied East Jerusalem, Israeli soldiers demolished a kindergarten and a women's center. And this is part of a plan known as E1 Jerusalem plan that's meant to encircle the eastern part of Jerusalem with colonial settlements to surround the city and claim it for Israel, denying the Palestinian people's historical and ongoing claim to the city. So to go along with that plan, they demolished a kindergarten and a women's center. And I can imagine Ron White getting on out there and say, boy, you got to be a real manly kind of man to demolish a kindergarten, don't you? Now, over at the United Nations, the Human Rights Council has basically started an investigation into what's going on at that Gaza border. And of course, Israel's been screaming, no, no, you don't do it. We will not cooperate. We will not let you in. Nikki Haley was arm twisting everybody, but couldn't stop them. She has no power of veto over the Human Rights Council. And a former senior U.S. legal official, David Crane, is going to be leading the investigation into the violence in Gaza. And of course, Israel is just absolutely furious. It just says we're being demonized. We're being unfairly demonized here. No, actually, you're reaping what you have sown. That bloody Monday massacre, that was Israel's version of Amritsar. It's the turning point. People cannot close their eyes now that they've been opened. Interestingly enough, Palestinian officials will now preside over the Group of 77, which is the largest coalition of developing nations. And of course, Israel's already out there screaming about that means the Group of 77 will just be a platform for spreading lies and incitement against Israel. I do get tired of hearing them whine. Now, the Freedom Flotilla has left Palermo on its last leg to break the illegal Israeli blockade of Gaza, and they've been trying this for 7 years, once with the loss of 10 activists' lives at the hands of Israeli commandos. It's not expected they'll get through again. If they do succeed, however, they're taking 3 boats, and they're hoping to donate the boats to a communal fishing group in Gaza, so that they can do more fishing and feed their families and everything. Sadly, I don't expect that they will get through. Israel right now is feeling that the optics are deteriorating, and they're following a policy that goes back to, I think it was Elon, who said, Israel must be like a mad dog to the rest of the world, too dangerous to mess with. And his policy has worked. The world sees Israel as a mad dog. But their whole attitude is, the least little offense, overreact. The least little incursion, overreact. Just pound, pound, pound. Because they're not paying for any of this stuff here. Now, there's a documentary that's out called Killing Gaza. It's going around the world. You can download it from Vimeo.com. And somebody was saying, if U.S. television were to show this documentary, Killing Gaza, support for Israel would just start to collapse. But of course, America television will never show anything that portrays the Palestinians in a sympathetic light or Israel as anything but the helpless victim, the helpless nuclear-armed victim dealing with burning kites. All right, let's take a phone call. Laura in Michigan, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Hey, first of all, I want to tell you, I just found out what aloha means. I never knew what it meant. I'm probably the only person in the world that didn't know. It means face, breathe, right?
It actually means several things based on the context in which it's used. It means love, it means hello, it means goodbye. It's kind of a catch-all, and its specific meaning depends on the context of its usage.
Well, what I saw was they said the Hawaiians greeted each other by touching their heads together.
Yes.
So alo was face, and aha was breathing their breath in.
Yeah, which is something that came to the islands from the Maoris. The Maoris do that as well, because breath was very important. It was very, very spiritual. It was the ka.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. Anyway, what I wanted to tell you about was I was monitoring a Zio Christian newscast about Israel.
Yep.
And they said 2 things I'd like you to comment on.
Okay.
One, that Israel wants to go to the moon, probably on our money, right? Does that have anything to do with Trump talking about Space Force?
Yes.
All of a sudden, Israel wants to go to the moon. And number 2, they were telling about most of the computer companies in the United States are going to move their research and development facilities to Israel.
Yes, many of them already have. And ever since then, we're getting all these CPU computer chips that turn out to have back doors in them.
Right. And what about the moon? What's the deal with the moon in Israel?
Well, it may just be Israel trying to, distract from what's going on in Gaza. Right now, we're seeing a resurgence in space activity. I mean, Russia, China, even in the U.S. with space privatization, and maybe Israel just wants to look like they're going to be part of that as well. But Israel has only ever had one astronaut who unfortunately died on the Columbia, and so they had a lot of weapons and a lot of rockets. They haven't really done a lot with space yet.
They got all that extra money to send somebody to the moon. Maybe we shouldn't have to send them so much every year.
Well, we've already spent them something like 10 times what it costs to put a man on the moon. And we didn't even get a new and improved Velcro out of all that money.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go. Yeah, all we, the American people, have gotten for all that money taken from us and given to Israel is the disdain of the rest of planet Earth. Now, Israel's Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has issued a new video calling on Palestinians in Gaza to overthrow Hamas in order to turn the refugee camps into the Singapore of the Middle East. He's basically out there saying that if you get rid of Hamas, we'll lift the blockade, we'll let money come on in, we'll let you build up your cities and everything. And basically said that, I'm looking for this one quote here, Lieberman said in the video, "My message to the people of Gaza is simple. You can choose between poverty and unemployment, or work and making a livelihood, between hatred and bloodshed, or coexistence and personal security. We, Israel, can be your ideal partners in an effort to turn the refugee camps into the Singapore of the Middle East. All we ask is that you recognize Israel's right to exist in peace." And of course, he didn't make any comment about recognizing Palestine's right to exist in peace. And I don't think the people in Gaza are going for it because Israel has made so many promises before that they never kept, like the right to return. Israel's government cannot be trusted any more than the U.S. government can be trusted. They've gone back on their word just too many times. Now, the new law in Israel, the nation-state law, the nation-state of the Jewish people law, has gotten some unexpected support and backing from Richard Spencer, who is the poster boy for the white nationalist movement, who was saying that Israel's nation-state law is going to be the template for other countries to say, this is a country for this kind of people only. And so Israel's going to be tarnished with that because we've all been told white nationalism is bad. And now we've got white nationalists saying, yeah, Israel's nation-state law, that's a good thing. So, unfortunately, Israel isn't the first. We've been seeing laws like this pop up in countries like Zimbabwe and now in South Africa. This could spread out of control. It really could. Meanwhile, over in Turkey, President Erdogan is responding to this nation-state law, saying the spirit of Hitler has re-emerged in racist Israel. And the law is being criticized for ruling out a two-state solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. And Netanyahu has hit back at Erdogan, saying Turkey has become a dark dictatorship under Erdogan. Boy, look who is talking. My goodness here. Now, maybe because Erdogan insulted Israel, but the U.S. Congress has defied the defense secretary and ordered a delay in F-35 sales to Turkey. And they're talking about an outright ban. I mean, they're trying to sell these boondoggles all over the world, and they've got a customer ready to go. Now they're going to say, no, you can't have it. You know what Turkey's going to do. They're going to turn around and start buying planes from Russia. Now, remember this whole ultimate deal that was put together by Jared Kushner? They were going to go in, and the gist of the deal was that Israel would ease off the restrictions on Gaza, and in exchange, the Palestinians would surrender their right of return and just say, no, we give up. You can have all of our homes and all of our lands, and we'll just stay here in this gulag. And that didn't go over very well, and nobody expected it to, because at heart, Israel is demanding the Palestinian people give up their own history, give up their historical places. So the negotiations basically ended without success. Plan B was tried, that failed. So there's a political vacuum there. All right, let's take another phone call. James in Charlotte, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mike. I just wanted to mention one thing, just to get your thoughts in general about it. There seems to be just a real dearth of of any allies that Trump has in Congress, of anybody that will speak out for him. I'm thinking other than Rand Paul, who has, come out talk and defended him for his post-summit statement in Helsinki, and I guess Devin Nunes and probably Jim Jordan. That's 3 out of 535 people in Congress. I mean, I just doesn't it seem like there's just a real dearth of anybody that will publicly speak out for him?
Yeah, it's, we're in an interesting time right now. I mean, how can I put this? Our government seems to be fighting itself openly, which looks bad to the people. It looks bad to the rest of the world. And while Trump is out there and the Defense Department's out there trying to say we're strong, I think we're actually looking weak to the rest of the world.
Well, we certainly are.
Yeah, and so could you repeat your last question for me?
Well, I don't know. Didn't know if you heard it clearly. And I was just saying that out of all of Congress, I've only heard of 3 people: Rand Paul, Devin Nunes, and Jim Jordan, that have really come out and shown any kind of genuine support publicly for President Trump.
Yeah.
And that sure seemed like a thin margin of allies there.
It really is. It's very thin. And what's really, I think, quite revealing is the fact that Trump's own party, the Republicans, are not supporting him. Of course, they didn't support him during the primaries. I mean, they were trying to handpick their chosen candidate as much as the Democrats were, and Trump spoiled it for both of them. But what was that quote that Lincoln came up with? A house divided cannot stand. And we're seeing our federal government just divide over this Trump issue. And they're so focused intensely on, getting Trump, they're not paying attention to other areas that concern we the people. And it's obviously all being coordinated and organized. I imagine that many of these people who are out there bashing Trump are not doing so out of a sense of personal conviction, but because they're compromised in some way. Mm-hmm. Or it's almost, the condemnation is almost too universal for it to be a genuine grassroots feeling.
Well, I'm thinking too, if the Democrats gain just a small handful of seats in the upcoming election, the ball game's over.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right, but the poll numbers are shifting against the Democrats. And right now, the only hope they've got is to flood those states that are borderline with illegal immigrant voters to try and basically steal those House and Senate seats. And that appears to be exactly what they're trying to do.
Trump should not have given up on this election reform.
No, he shouldn't.
It looks like it's just been totally abandoned.
And unfortunately, Trump by himself, there are limits to what he can do, because under the way the country is supposed to work, Congress will make the laws, Trump signs them into law. Trump can't just go on out and do stroke of the pen, law of the land, although his predecessors did and were challenged on that. But yeah, I'm sorry that he disbanded the Election Integrity Commission. I don't know why he is not pushing for a mandatory national voter ID law, or to modify the current federal law that says illegal immigrants cannot vote in federal elections. That should be expanded to say any elections, anywhere in this country, not even dog catcher.
Well, fortunately, we've got a strong movement toward the voter ID here in North Carolina.
Good.
I think it's going to come into law.
Will that be voted on before November, or is it not going to be a factor until then?
Yeah, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be, yeah.
Okay, good. Good. Yeah, I
appreciate your thought.
I mean, when you look out in California now, where they're literally passing laws to allow illegal immigrants to vote in every election that they can, you know, for like school board and city council and all the rest of that, the question is it legal for non-citizens to vote for the House and Senate seats? Or are they just going to go ahead and do it anyway, counting on the fact that without voter ID, nobody's going to know it's being done?
In California, I can guarantee you they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I lived there for 6 years. Well, I saw this coming a long time ago.
Yeah, I lived there for a lot of years, and until I got blacklisted. Anyway, listen, James, I got to let you go, and I got to take a quick break here for the commercial. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And checking the email. Got an email here that says, I'd love to see Israel go to the moon, or Jupiter, or Mars, or anyone else but here on Earth, but hey, that's just me. Reminds me of the old feminist joke, if they can put a man on the moon, why can't they put all of them? All right, Trump says he's ready to make a real deal with Iran. And he basically was yesterday making a speech in Kansas City and said he's ready to make a real deal with Iran, saying Iran is not the same country anymore, and this new deal will not be like the disaster deal made by the Obama administration. And this is coming just 2 days after all of these bellicose tweets going back and forth. And so basically what they're going to go in for is, again, shut down all the nuclear activity, and they want the missiles. Israel wants those long-range missiles to be taken down. Iran will never go for that. Iran will not go for that. Iran, meanwhile, is threatening countermeasures if the U.S. blocks its oil exports. They're threatening to basically find a way to jam up the Strait of Hormuz. They're going to have to be very creative about it because obviously the Iranian Navy is no match for the U.S. Navy, even with all the problems the U.S. Navy ships have. But U.S. sanctions are going to be reimposed on Iran, and the Trump administration is still trying to arm twist other countries to go along with sanctioning Iran by threatening sanctions on them. Now, the corporate media is trying to basically bury stories of all the times Hillary Clinton met with Putin and consorted with the Russians, both when she was Secretary of State and at other times. And they're trying to basically make it look like it was a unique incident for President Trump to have a closed-door meeting with President Putin and then hold a press conference afterwards. But other presidents have done it. And it was no big deal. They're just seizing on this as yet another way to demonize Donald Trump and to go after him. And of course, they want tensions to increase with Russia because that means more money taken from you, for which you will receive absolutely nothing of any value in return. And it gets given to the Pentagon, who get to go on out with all that money and just play with their new toys and have a lot of fun and live high on the hog at your expense here. Now, Bill Browder is once again in the news, and the media is basically trying to portray him as being a victim. As you know, Russian authorities want to talk to him because for many years in Russia, 1999 on, he ran a hedge fund inside Russia that was registered in tax havens Guernsey and the Cayman Islands. And they made a huge amount of money, and they got $1.5 billion out of Russia without paying any taxes. So Russia wants to talk to Bill Browder and his associates. And of course, the U.S. is not going to let it happen. But Bill Browder was on MSNBC, and they're trying to make it look like, you know, he's in danger, that Putin might poison him with Novichok. And so he was on MSNBC, and Joy Reid was asking, you know, are you afraid, Bill? Are you taking precautions for your safety? And Browder replied, am I at risk of being killed by Vladimir Putin's regime? Yes. and that there's not much that he can do if they're going to use chemical weapons to put poison on my doorknob. Well, Bill, I wouldn't worry all that much, because to judge by what happened over in Great Britain, that supposedly instantly deadly Novichok was only effective 20% of the time, because 5 people got contaminated with it, we're told, and only 1 died. And that one was the alcoholic druggie. Polls are showing, however, that the majority of Americans are perfectly okay with the idea of Vladimir Putin coming to the United States toward the end of this year and meeting with Trump again. And Congress, though, is showing their ire and the disdain. They're saying that Putin will not be invited to address Congress or even invited to visit the Capitol building. We'll just leave him down there at the other end of the mall over there on Pennsylvania Avenue. He can just hang out there. This is from the same Congress that gives Vladimir Putin record numbers of standing ovations when he comes on in and begs for more money to kill Palestinians with. Now, interestingly enough, videos are starting to surface on the independent media of demonstrations in Great Britain regarding President Trump's visit. These demonstrations were all in favor of him, pro-Trump demonstrators, and there were a lot of them, and they were very, very large. But the U.S. corporate media ignored all of those positive demonstrations. They only showed the anti-Trump rallies and that silly balloon stunt. That's why you've got to support the independent media. You're not going to find out what's really going on if we get forced to close. We'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about the bias and the filtering in the corporate media. And over at Fairness and Accuracy in Reporting, they're keeping count. And they basically said over the last year, MSNBC covered Stormy Daniels 455 times, and the war in Yemen, none. Not once. So that's why corporate media is in trouble here. The good news is polls are showing 92% of Republicans and 72% of the American people overall know that corporate media is fake news. So that's the good news right there. Now, you can work out the math to figure out how many Democrats know that corporate media is fake news, but these are good numbers. These are very good numbers, and it's telling us the truth is getting on out there, that the corporate media has lost their ability to control, or is losing their ability to control what you think about anything. Now, as you know, Fox News has just clamped down on their reporters, saying no more investigative reports about Obama or the FBI. In fact, they're just going to comment on stories carried by other media. And it's thought this is because Rupert Murdoch is trying to buy Sky News, and he's playing nice with politics. But a lot of people are saying it's just not the same old Fox News it used to be. One of their hosts is leaving to go over and join The View, and now Kimberly Guilfoyle has announced she is leaving Fox News to campaign for President Trump. And as you probably have already heard, she's dating the president's son, Donald Jr. She's a staunch supporter of him. And of course, this news was greeted wildly by the MAGA base, because she is pleasant on the eyeballs. All right, take a phone call. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I'd rather watch paint dry on the wall than watch The View. Wretched show.
I have this one person who writes into me constantly about all the insane things that are on The View, and I don't watch the show myself. And I keep writing back and saying, why do you put yourself through this? Why are you putting yourself through all of this agony, to just get so riled up? Find something else to watch. Go over to National Geographic or something. Or go over to BBC.
Mike, why would you want to watch?
Hang on a sec. Go over to BBC and watch the Planet Earth series. If you're tired of politics, that Planet Earth series, that is amazing. I have camera envy, I got to tell you. Anyway, what's on your mind, Dustin?
Yeah, it's Mike. On The View, it's like, I love Hillary. No, I like Hillary. That's all they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I like, it's like, why would you want to watch that? Go learn something. Yeah. Planet Earth's a great series. Oh,
Yeah,
all that stuff, those documentaries, underwater. Educate yourself, people. Expand your horizons. That Kim Kardashian crap on reality TV show crap. Well,
yeah, it's really good. By the way, there's apparently a petition movement underway for Whoopi Goldberg to be fired from The View after that whole spitting and pushing incident.
Well, she should have been fired from acting after the movie The Telephone. If you ever see that one, oh boy, that's the worst. There's the worst movies, like she's on the telephone the whole movie, and you find out nobody's on the other end of the line at the end of the movie. The worst pile of garbage I ever sat through.
Well, I missed that one.
Yeah, don't bother. Mike, where's the love of the children? Like, where's the love of the children for Yemen?
Yeah.
Not a peep. Zero, Mike. They're starving them to death. I mean, come on now. This shows you what these people are. They're just
America's
creatures.
corporate media, they're making a big deal about the kids down there on our southern border, the illegal, they're suffering, they're doing all this. Well, it's the fault of the parents who brought them in here. But the children of Yemen are getting no coverage. The children of Palestine are getting no coverage. The children of Syria are getting no coverage. The children of Libya are getting no coverage. It's just very, very obvious that corporate media is a giant propaganda machine.
What about the children of Flint, Michigan drinking poison water?
Well, that did get some corporate media coverage because, a lot of people were concerned about the quality of water. Actually, the quality of tap water all across the country is in serious and dangerous decline. Now, we're fortunately very lucky here in Hawaii. I did a water test on our water. We get our water from inside an extinct volcano, and except for being exceptionally hard, it's actually pretty good.
Hey, Mike, I wanted to switch on Iran if I got time left. They just got to sit and wait, Mike, because Belt and the Road is the future for them. Like, they can do commerce with Russia and China and Turkey. They don't need, sure, it's going to be, Mike, it's what's that saying? Short-term pain is long-term gain. You know what I mean? The Belt and Road is now. It started in 2013 also. That's when the project actually started. So it's moving along. So they just got to wait. They're just going to have hardships and stuff. But, Russia, their economy was up this year. And next year it's going to be up even more because they are self-sustaining now more than ever. That's why Putin reduced the amount of money for the military for the next fiscal year. He's putting into infrastructure and stuff. They got nukes. That's their protection. They got enough weapons to protect themselves.
Yes.
They're putting it into the internally. And that's where you see entrepreneurship, flourish. And, that's why.
In both Iran and in Russia, the real threat, of course, is a covert attempt at undermining the government and bringing it down, which we know they did to Iran in 1953, tried to do it again in 2009. Apparently, they're trying yet again. There have been indications they're trying to do that inside Russia, and Putin was forced to shut down all of these non-governmental organizations that were like funding his opposition and trying to stir up trouble, like USAID.
It's going to be Iran. They're not going to be able to do that anymore. It's like that's long gone. Just like they're trying to split Russia from China, that is long past. That's not going to happen.
No, China and Russia are moving closer together. And see, back at the end of World War II, when the U.S. adopted this methodology, nobody else knew about it. Nobody else had thought about doing it, about conquering a nation from within. Sort of a covert colonialism. But now it's been all these years and all of these cases where the U.S. has done this, and it's succeeded about half the time. But every time it fails, the targeted country stands up and says, look at what the United States has tried to do to us. And people have been learning and studying. And they've learned to recognize the symptoms of what's going on. And it looks like they were trying to do the same thing down in Nicaragua, and that has fallen flat on its face.
And Turkey, remember what Turkey just said? No, we're going to continue buying oil from Iran. They just said that the other day.
Yep.
So right there, that tells you Iran just, like I said, they're going to have some struggles and stuff, But the Belt and the Road is the future, Mike, because I said the world is moving away from this U.S. hegemony, and it might be fast sometimes, it might be slow certain times. But, like, you know, Mike, what's funny, you look at Turkey and Germany, those countries are important when they flip. I mean, I mean, that's, you know what I mean? I mean, Germany and Turkey, if they flip, like with Nord Stream 2, they're not going to give up Nord Stream 2.
No, they're
Germany,
not.
No way.
No, they're not.
Because I think 600 corporations use natural gas. You know, they rely on Russia, and the pipeline's a lot more stable than having a ship coming in. You know, I mean, there's no way you can equalize that pipeline versus a ship, liquefied liquid gas. It's no way there's no comparison, you know. But that's all I wanted to say, Mike.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Mark in North Carolina. Aloha, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Mark, are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. What's on your mind?
Hey, did I just hear you right about Fox News? They said they're not going to cover anything negative about Obama and the rest of the criminals that were in his administration anymore?
Basically, their reporters have been told not to do their own original investigative pieces on Obama or the FBI under Obama. That Fox News' new model is that they will simply comment and analyze stories coming from other sections of the corporate media. They don't want to step on anybody's toes.
I wonder whether Hannity and Tucker are going to go along with this, or they're just going to do it and let them fire. Because I tell you the truth, in a lot of ways, the fake news network, that's what I call them, are worse even than the crap news network or nothing but crap news network and the rest, because they pretend to be something they're not. They're not patriots. They're biggest liars as the others. They continue to lie about Syria. They continue to lie about Russia. They continue to lie about Iran. They continue to push the warmongering. It's about time they are brought to their knees. It almost happened after the election because they really took a position against Trump, and then they found that their ratings were almost in the toilet. And with Megyn Kelly rallying around Megyn Kelly and all that, and they had to go back to Hannity, and they brought in Tucker and stuff like that. I don't watch them much. As a matter of fact, most of the time I see anything about Fox now is when somebody replays Tucker or Hannity on YouTube or something like that. But I'm telling you one thing: we got to work to bring these people down. They do not deserve to stay in business if they're going to do this.
We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that because all of these news networks are in serious trouble. I mean, more people are watching Nickelodeon than watch CNN. I have Fox News on this little TV here in my studio with the closed captioning turned on. More to find out what the official view of everything is. And for a while, at least for the last year and a half, they were, in my opinion, a little more balanced than CNN or MSNBC. But with this new announcement coming on down, then there's really nothing on corporate media worth looking at. And as I said, the only reason is I want to see what the official story is going on. Like they've had Pompeo in front of Congress, the Foreign Relations Committee, screaming about North Korea this and Russia that, and just frothing at the mouth.
Yeah, I heard that. I heard that on the radio coming back, and I was thinking that pedophile there, that unfortunately he really wasn't convicted. I mean, the majority of the jury wanted to convict him. Of course, they're not going to try to retry him. Bob Menendez there from New Jersey.
Yes.
Was acting all high and mighty. Not that I got any use for Pompeo either. But, I mean, this guy, of all people, this little nerd pedophile, I almost felt like reaching my hand in the radio, but I knew, couldn't do it. I mean, it's just got to stop. I mean, this is insulting to us. I mean, I try not to get too emotional anymore because, I try to look at what's important. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I just went to the doctor the other day. I had a spot on my head that I was scared to death over, and they had to do a biopsy, and thank God it turned out to be negative. It was something they could just scrape off. But, I went through 2 days of waiting for the results and all that, and it was like, oh, man, I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. And I started to realize what's really important. But at the same time, I love this country. I don't want to see this country destroyed from within. I understand these people are enemies. The real enemy is not Russia, it's not Iran, it's not Syria, it's not China. The real enemy is right here in this country, and it's internal, it's domestic. And that's what, and I try, at least what I try to do is I try to pass stories around, because I know with YouTube and Facebook and what Twitter try to do, they try to stop, people from understanding. So anytime I find information out, I just hit, I hit Twitter and I hit Facebook to share with friends and tell them share. So they can't totally stop us. They'd like to, but they can't. And that's the best I can do. But I'm trying not to get...
Every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. Right. And if we're all doing it, I mean, look at those numbers we were talking about. Almost 3/4 of Americans now recognize corporate media is fake news. We're making gains here. And if we're all working together... I've already deleted the talking point. I reported on it just a little while ago. But those are the latest numbers. But if we're all of us, everybody listening to the show, if we're doing the same thing that you're doing, just finding these stories and sharing them with everybody that we know, we've got momentum right now. And you're right, they'd like to find a way to shut us all down. That's why they're going after our advertisers and hacking our servers and so forth. But at some point, there's going to be a push to establish that the First Amendment has to apply to commercial social media, that they need to basically be classified as public utilities and managed as such. And the FCC's bogus decision to avoid that in order to end net neutrality, it really is illegitimate. But at some point, there's going to be a test case that'll go all the way to the Supreme Court that will say, just like on the telephone system or all traffic has to be equal.
Utility.
Because the internet, it's not just a hobbyist toy anymore. Our lives are dependent on it. And we do have a First Amendment right to peacefully assemble, which is what we do in virtual space, and talk.
One of the things I'm so impatient with Trump is this, and angry at him, is because he should know to start antitrust actions against these tech companies. These tech companies are plain and simple evil. They're trying to dominate. They're part of the globalist, New World Order, Illuminati, whatever you really want to call them. Mm-hmm. It really comes to the same thing. They want control of not only this country, they want control of the world. One of the reasons I hate Russia so much, the main reason I hate Russia so much, is because they know they're not part of that New World Order. They know Putin sees through them and is not a globalist. And they know Trump really isn't either, but Trump, unfortunately, is not as right as Putin, or at least certainly doesn't quite understand who these enemies are the way Putin does. He thinks he can hire them and they'll be loyal to him, like when he was running, like he's building a condominium or a resort hotel or something like that. He doesn't seem to understand that these people are like sharks. They just, all they want to do is, they prey on everything and everybody around them. That's all they are. It's what I call, a lot of people call crony capitalism. I call it a predatory form of capitalism. It's capitalism at the extreme, kind of like socialism at the extreme is communism. Capitalism at the extreme is a predatory type of capitalism where they eat everything up. They even buy off the people who are running the country. They're supposed to be working for people. They're bought off, and then you get people like Menendez, running things, or what's the guy's name? South Carolina.
Mark, I'm going to have to let Mark. I'm sorry to cut you off. Going to have to let you go for a commercial break. We got another caller waiting on the line. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And a little bit of good news coming out of China, because apparently China and Bhutan have resumed border talks a year after that Doklam spat involving India. Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. We've got a caller waiting on the line. Janice in Florida. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, Mike. I'd like to discuss the recurrence of countries being brought down by enemies from within. One major example is the Turkish Ottoman Empire that was brought down by the Sephardic Jews who came from during the expulsion from Spain. Many centuries later, many of them they were crypto converts to Islam, and they became part of the bureaucracy and the power structure in the Ottoman Empire, and they, of course, made alliances with the Ashkenazi Jews throughout the rest of Europe. But they were responsible for the torment of the Pontic Greeks, the Greeks who had been there long before Islam had conquered the Turkish Anatolian Peninsula. And those Greeks suffered horrendously first. They were the first Christians that were thrown out by the bureaucracy in the Ottoman Empire. And then the Sephardi's also managed to get the Armenians killed. Once again, Greek Orthodox, Armenian Orthodox. And that's the reason why all those caves and catacombs existed exist today as the tourist attraction in Turkey. They were built by the Christians for survival from the torments of the Ottoman military. But even further back, even the concept of the Trojan horse, the Trojans were not so stupid that they would blindly bring in a horse full of soldiers and then just get drunk and fall asleep. It was an example. It was like a shortened symbol, a warning of things that must have happened in the past, and a warning to people in the future to beware of the enemy within. Now, recently I've been following the story of the killings in Canada, where their Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, so eagerly let in, opened his arms to the world. And they're calling this guy, Faisal Hussein, a sick. He's mentally ill. He's not a terrorist. No, nobody dares bring up that word. The man is just, his parents immediately said, well, he's suffering from mental illness. Well, then in that case, our jails are full of criminals who must be suffering from mental illness. The absurdity, I mean, some would even say that Islam itself.
Well, hang on. I have to take issue with that, Janice. In the case of this Faisal Hussein, he was being treated for depression. And we know that those medications can take an ordinary, perfectly harmless human being and just cause them to flip out and be a monster. And what we're hearing from his friends and his family is that's exactly what happened. There was nothing in his past whatsoever to indicate that he was going to be potentially violent. It just happened. And if you go over to ssristories.org, you'll read all these case studies that look virtually identical about how just, normal people who are given these medications because they make money, all of a sudden bad things happen to them. And I know that from personal experience because many years ago, shortly before I met Claire, I'll tell you what, Janice, I got to let you go. And we got another caller waiting on the line, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to take a phone call from James in Ohio. Aloha, James. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. As far as your email about the moon being a good place to put the Jews, I actually, when I was about 15, a Jewish journalist said that H.L. Mencken actually said that. He has another quote. It's one of my favorites, and it's much more apt for these times. I'm sure you probably won't like it very much, but he said, but I'm sure you can understand it just as well. He said, every normal man must be tempted at times to spit upon his hands, hoist the black flag, and begin slitting throats.
Actually, I'm familiar with the quote, and I'm not upset by it at all because you're right. It's very appropriate to these times. It's just at my age, I'm sort of past my throat-slitting years.
Right, yeah. Well, that's all I got for you. Everybody, by the way, should donate to keep what really happened in Republic Broadcasting on the air. Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much for the plug. Thank you for the call. We're going to let you go. Get on back here to the news. Now, North Korea's talks have entered the realm of small victories, and that was illustrated by the revelation that satellite imagery is showing North Korea is in fact dismantling this rocket engine testing stand that was one of the things that they talked about at the Trump-Kim Jong-un summit. And of course, there are people in the U.S. for whom this is not enough, Mike Pompeo being one of them. In fact, that Pompeo interview before the Foreign Relations committee today. He's a hardliner. There's no other way to describe it. But at least North Korea has done something, and it would be reasonable for the U.S. to indicate its sincerity in moving forward with this deal to do something in return. But of course, Pompeo is dead set against that. Now, an interesting little story has just surfaced here. Remember Otto Warmbier? He was a student. He was over in North Korea, and he decided to grab a souvenir poster off the wall, which is illegal, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for trying to steal the poster, which I agree is a little much. But as part of the thawing relations between North Korea and the U.S., he was returned home in a vegetative state and died soon after, and everybody was out there saying, oh, he'd obviously been tortured to death, and horrible, horrible North Koreans, and the corporate media went with it, even Trump went with it. Well, apparently, a pathologist has completed his study of Otto's remains. And he said what he's seeing, there's no signs of torture, but he's seeing all the indications of a suicide attempt. So that was also fake news, that he was tortured by North Korea. Now, taking all this brand new money that Trump has given the Defense Department, everybody is gussying up their platform of choice, and the Army is going to start arming Bradleys with heat-seeking, drone-killing Stinger missiles. Now, up until recently, Bradleys, in addition to their onboard artillery, are armed with TOW wire-guided anti-tank missiles, which is a land-only weapon. And so now they want to put Stinger missiles on the Bradleys, exterior-mounted, not man-portable, in order to hit low-flying aircraft, drones, and helicopters. Now, the Stinger, if I recall correctly, has a maximum ceiling of 9,000 feet, and it should work against those targets. The one thing it will not be able to work against, of course, is an electrically powered drone, which so many of them are, especially for surveillance. Now, the Army has selected firms to design the next generation of infantry weapons. They've basically decided they've had enough fun with the M249 light machine gun and the Colt M4 modular weapon system carbine, which is sort of an update on the M16. And so they're going to start buying all new guns, more money, more weapons, more things to play with, more profits for the military-industrial complex. Now, interestingly enough, Russia has filed a criminal case of treason against several employees of the Central Research Institute of Mechanical Engineering. And security officials have accused some of the scientists from the hypersonic weapons development program of transferring the secrets to the United States. So we're back to spy versus spy. Interestingly enough, though, Miller and Holder shut down an FBI investigation into stolen U.S. stealth defense technology that implicated Lockheed Martin, while James Comey was Lockheed's top lawyer. Now, for nearly 4 years, the FBI was investigating the international theft of stealth defense technology from a small Florida marine company that had invented an ingenious way to help protect Navy ships and nuclear ballistic submarines from being detected on enemy radar and sonar. And on the very evening before the case was to go to a grand jury, the case was closed by then FBI Director Robert Mueller and then Attorney General Eric Holder, who, as I mentioned, is indicating he might run in 2020. So it's described as the original pay-to-play scheme, and it involved Mueller, Holder, James Comey, and even Hillary Clinton. This is from Steve Morton, the inventor and owner of a rare robotic ship and submarine stealth painting technology. So more politics and more corruption. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are rejoining the network. So let's get into the economic news. There's been a couple of major developments here. One of America's largest providers of credit internationally is out there saying China could potentially end the U.S. trade war with a debt reset by dumping all their U.S. Treasury holdings all at once. And that would basically end the debt bubble overnight. China has options that the U.S. simply does not have a response to. Now, this news just hit right now, and apparently this represents a retreat from Trump's previous positions. It won't be described as that, but apparently the United States and the European Union have agreed to a framework for bringing tariffs and trade barriers down to zero for goods traded between the U.S. and Europe. Trump announced that just earlier today. Automobiles are excluded from this, but everything else is there. They're aiming for zero tariffs. Europe had to make some concessions to buy more U.S. agricultural products, probably the GMO. But that's the deal they came up with. So all of a sudden, we're backing away from all of this sanctions stuff. It really wasn't going to work on out. Now, over at the Atlanta Federal Reserve, they're saying they're expecting that the U.S. economy is going to jump 4.5% in the second quarter. Not everybody agrees with them, such as the New York Fed. What was it Harry Truman used to say about economists? If you took all the economists in the world and laid them end to end, they'd still point in different directions. All right, let's take a phone call. Bruce in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mike. How do you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Super. I just have two quick comments to make. First of all, I don't really watch Fox News until maybe I'm in someone else's house or not to eat. But I was noticing the other day, Senator Menendez from New Jersey, he was on two channels down talking the appointment of Cavanaugh or the confirmation of Cavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Now, how did this guy even get out of that child molestation charge that he was? I mean,
apparently he was acquitted, and he can't be charged. He can't be tried again under double jeopardy. I don't know. Maybe they bought the jury, or the jury was threatened. Who knows how these things get done?
Yeah. Well, how is this guy being a moral, judge on anything? How's he even sit there? I don't know. But that's one issue. Another one is the Mandalay Bay suing the victims' families.
Yes.
I think this is a move to restrict discovery more than anything else, because that thing was such a screw up that they don't want to have it going to the state court. A ruling was made, or precedent was made after 9/11 that all families of terrorist attacks must have their suits heard in federal court. So isn't that convenient?
I think you're right. That would be because the optics on this thing are very, very bad. People are outraged by the idea that MGM is suing the victims of the shooting. But I think you're right. If MGM wins this lawsuit, that's the end of it, and there will be no more of these cases where discovery would apply and the Mandalay Bay would be required to surrender security videos, visitor logs, and all kinds of other information.
Bingo. Not only the hotel, but all the agencies and entities that may be involved in what happened there. That's all I have there, Mike. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go here. Yeah, that's definitely an interesting take, because MGM not only owns the Mandalay Bay, they owned the concert venue as well. And so discovery would include any security footage from the concert venue as well, which might show what direction the shots were coming from. Okay, very interesting article, and this gets back to what I was saying about how one Federal Reserve is saying the economy is going up, the other one is saying no. And there's an article that came out of Lou Rockwell, Can We Trust the Experts? And he's basically talking about how just before Trump's election, there were all these so-called economic experts that were forecasting that if Trump were elected, the economy would be doomed. And former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers predicted if Trump were elected, there would be a protracted recession within 18 months. And a month before the election, the Washington Post ran an editorial with the headline, "A President Trump could destroy the world economy." Steve Ratner, a Democratic financier and former head of the National Economic Council, warned, if the unlikely event happens and Trump wins, you'll see a market crash of historic proportions. So when Trump's electoral victory became apparent, Nobel Prize-winning economist and New York Times columnist Paul Krugman warned the world was very probably looking at a global recession with no end in sight. And by the way, Krugman has a history of being wrong on most of his economic predictions, but he keeps on making predictions and people keep listening to him. Now, we're 18 months into the Trump term in office. The economy is weak and it is shaky. There are indications it may go into a recession early next year, but it won't be Trump's fault. This economy was messed up by previous administrations going back decades. In fact, going back 100 years to the creation of the Federal Reserve. That's when the doom of our economy was born. And they've been just sort of kicking the problem down the road a little bit more each administration. But we're at the end of that road. And I'm sure the Democrats would be delighted if the economy crashed so they could blame it on Trump and the GOP. But we know that a lot of the bad decisions came out of the Democrats, and I'll give you a good example. That's when Bill Clinton basically looted the Social Security Trust Fund of its cash buildup, spent it as general revenues. That's where he got his magic federal budget surplus. He literally embezzled the money of the American workers and spent it as general revenues. And that's why today they're warning Social Security, they're dipping into their reserve capital. They're going to be out of money in just a few years. Now, Bill Clinton did that. He spent all of that. That's a Democrat who did that. And one of the most outrageous things he said, in my opinion, is that he announced there would be no sanctions relief until Russia returns Crimea to Ukraine. Now, that's a non-starter. The people of Crimea don't want to be part of Ukraine. They voted to leave Ukraine. They voted to merge with the Russian republics. Russia's not going to go for this. What really alarms me is that Mike Pompeo seems to be acting like he is setting foreign policy rather than Donald Trump. And Pompeo is supposed to be implementing what Trump wants. Now, maybe if Trump is out there saying we've got to return Crimea to Ukraine, he's playing with fire on that one. He's absolutely playing with fire on that one. Now, down in Southern California, home sales have basically hit the brakes, falling to the lowest reading for the month in 4 years. This is hitting both newly built and existing houses, and sales dropped basically 11% year over year, even as prices shot up to a record high. Now, it's kind of hard to figure out why the prices are going up, because there is a surplus of inventory because of all the millennials who are still living at home after graduating college, because of the mounting numbers of homeless. There's a lot of empty properties out there. Prices should be going down, but they're being bubbled up. This is a repeat of 2008. But it looks like the bubble is on the verge of bursting yet again. And yet again, the taxpayers will be forced to pick up the losses to save those poor bankers who really meant no harm. All right, let's take a phone call. Al in Canada, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. You were just talking about Bill Clinton, and of course, you know, when you mentioned Bill Clinton and the Social Security Fund, the video on YouTube went all screwy, and it went into the, you know, the buffer underrun cash nonsense, and it happens a lot on your show. And I was curious as to whether or not you mentioned something about him signing the Glass-Steagall Repeal Act as well.
Yes, he did that as well.
Yeah. See, as soon as you mentioned Bill Clinton and him looting Social Security, the video went all screwy on YouTube.
Well, I'm still waiting for real video.
The arrow in the middle that just goes in a circle.
Yeah, I'm waiting for real video to tell me I've got a channel, because I applied to them actually a while ago and I still have not heard back from them. And as soon as I get that, I'm going to switch over my live streaming camera to Real Video, which I have been told it will support that, as well as a limited amount of archives. But I'm getting emails from people all over the place saying that my site is now being blocked at Wi-Fi in their library, in their local donut shop. They really are trying to crack down. They're really trying to keep the American people ignorant. And it's going to backfire because they tried exactly the same thing in the former Soviet Union. And all that did was make people go to the samizdat more and more frequently. Because once people understand they're being lied to, and 74% of Americans know they're being lied to by the corporate media, it kicks off this instinct to find the truth, to go and find the truth, and to go wherever the truth can be found.
And you've already said that, basically this is what's going to happen to the United States because, you can't build a castle on a foundation of lies.
You can't. You really can't.
And it's all coming to light. I mean, in Canada, we've got this white helmet thing now happening. For 250 of them coming into this country. I mean, what does that say? That right there, it just blows it wide open. And they're going through Israel to get here. I mean, are these people that stupid that we think that they actually think that we can't understand what's actually happening?
Well, you're not going to see the story about the White Helmets going through Israel and being sent up to Canada and Great Britain. It's not on the corporate media. It's not being reported at all.
It is. CBC reported it last night, in the middle of the night, Mike.
Well, I meant American American corporate media hasn't.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, good that CBC did report it because the Canadian people do need to understand. These white helmets were part of al-Nusra. They're on video helping al-Nusra kill people, and now we're just supposed to sit and say, "Oh yes, it's okay if they're my new neighbor."
Yeah. Well, this is how these countries, and Canada's included in this, uses other people to do their dirty work.
Yep.
And then they're going to bring those people that did their dirty work into the country. And so what's going to happen? Someone's going to shoot up Toronto again?
Who knows? Who knows? I still think Toronto was SSRIs. Anyway, Al, I got to let you go. Okay. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Now, Elizabeth Warren is one of the names being floated around for a possible run for the White House in 2020. But apparently, she's off to a bad start. Elizabeth Warren was being interviewed on CNBC and said that if the Democrats succeed in taking control of Congress this November, they will end the Trump tax cuts. And then Warren also proposed a 50% tax increase on American earners. Now, Congress can pass a bill to end the tax cuts, but if Trump doesn't sign it, it means nothing unless they can override his veto. And telegraphing a major tax increase as part of the Democratic agenda ahead of the midterm elections is not likely to garner more votes for the Democrats, not in a nation of voters who are already feeling they're overtaxed and receive too little in return for it. All right, going to take another phone call. Keith in Montana. Aloha, Keith. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I was kind of laughing this morning. Mike, I got an email from the White House this morning there, and it was on this Mike Pompeo. It was titled Religious Persecution in Iran and China Must End. And it goes on to talk about the fact that the United States is going to spearhead this, where they said that we need to hear stories of those persecuted, tortured, falsely imprisoned, and killed for their faith. And all I could think about was black prisons in Gitmo and whatever like that, as well as the Palestinians and such, you know.
Yes.
But anyway, it goes on to talk about here the fact of they want to talk to the survivors and stuff like that. Well, then I thought, well, they should go to all the war zones or like that. But anyway, on top of that, the United States, you know, whatever they do in the world like that is interesting like that. But while they're worried about China and Iran, there are over 41,000 100,000 suicide deaths here a year, or 112 deaths per day. The rate of homelessness has gone down, though, but it's 17.7 per 10,000 now. There's 41 million that struggle with hunger in the United States, including the 13 million children. And of course, these statistics have gone up a little bit. 5.4 million seniors struggle enough to eat on. The household debt soars to above 13 trillion. The median American estimated CEO to worker pay has jumped from 30 to 1 up to 354 to 1. And of course, the amount of Americans renouncing their citizenship is up 560% from the Bush administration highs. But I just can't believe the audacity that someone would point to some other country, as you were relating that story about that American that died over in Korea, or from whatever causes like that. But anyway, his suicide, whatever like that. But anyway, that they always point fingers at how bad things are. Then you think about people that are having their kids taken from them because they refuse to to vaccinate them and stuff. Do people see this hypocrisy from the U.S. government?
Well, they're starting to. I mean, again, in times past, the corporate media was there to make sure that you heard the bad things about other countries and only the good things about our country.
Yeah, and it just amazes me. Like, it's like you and I both grew up on this constant Russia. Get underneath your school desk, all the stuff like that.
Yep.
The term I'm hearing now is blue ISIS for our law enforcement today. They'll gun you down. It doesn't matter where. If you're holding a bottle of water or anything like that, I just can't believe people cannot see what's going on in this country.
Well, my sense is that people are seeing it. They're starting to be willing to talk about it. The social taboo against criticizing our own nation seems to be coming to an end. My experience, certainly around here, when we're out shopping or we're over at Claire's church with the choir or anything, is people are starting to talk back and forth, and they understand things are bad. They don't know what they can do about it. Too many of them are caught up in that fantasy that if they just wait long enough, some hero will come to save them, which is nonsense. But I can see that the anger is starting to build out there.
Yeah, you remember you mentioned here about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago, about that ceiling tile that had fallen in that subway on that guy? In New Jersey somewhere.
Oh,
anyway.
Yes.
I was listening. Yeah, I was listening to one of Gerald Salente's videos there, and I got to laughing so hard. He was referring to America's rail system as to that of Calcutta. And all I could imagine was a whole bunch of these Indians over there hanging on these trains, trying to get a train,
It is rather amazing to see those Indian trains where they're all piled up on the roof and just hanging off the edge and everything. Anyway, listen, Keith, we're coming up
all right,
here.
That's it, Mike.
Yeah, all right, we're coming up on a commercial break.
Yeah, tell Claire hi, okay?
All right, I certainly will. Thank you very much. We're going to let you go. All righty. Apparently, Elon Musk is threatening to hire lawyers and sue a popular Tesla critic. And apparently, the critic has said couldn't afford to go to court, so he's going to stop writing about Tesla. This is a bad precedent. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Now, the former head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement was interviewed on Fox News, and Thomas Holman, had quite a few things to say. And one of them is that San Francisco makes it clear what the immigration debate is really all about. It's about votes for Democrats. And this idea that San Francisco has passed a bill or a resolution allowing illegal immigrants to vote in the school board elections is just the beginning. And we're looking at this is the camel's nose under the tent, because the next step will be a claim that it is discriminatory to allow illegal immigrants to vote in local and state elections and not for members of Congress and for the president. That's what they're pushing for. Now, call me old-fashioned, but they're illegal immigrants. They're not supposed to be here. And as an American voter who is a citizen, I don't want non-citizens voting in the elections because they're going to be skewing our country for their benefit. And they're not supposed to be here. It's illegal for them to be here. It's that plain and simple. And the Democrats are literally taking what does not belong to them, the country, and bartering it to the illegal immigrants in exchange for votes. That's what's really going on here. It is wrong. It is, in fact, illegal. And I'm glad that the law does not allow members of illegal immigrants to vote for members of Congress. But there's going to be massive election fraud. I mean, the illegal immigrants coming into California, they're given driver's licenses, at which point they're automatically registered to vote, and nobody asks to see, you know, where they're from when they go to vote. So they could, in theory, be voting for members of Congress this November in huge, huge numbers, and that is absolutely wrong. Now, Donald Trump, I know he's got a lot to deal with on his plate right now, but if the Democrats take the Congress this November, they're going to make the second 2 years of his term in office a living hell. And I'm in agreement with that other caller. I don't understand why Trump shut down the Election Integrity Commission. I know the commission was just being stonewalled by all the state election commissions. Refused to turn over records, refused to do this, refused to do that. It's very obvious our entire election system has been completely corrupted. And all the members of all these state election commissions, they're in on it. And they're trying to protect it. It's a scandal. It is a national scandal. Now, apparently, this is coming out of the effort to reunify children with their parents. But apparently, at least 142 children have been abandoned by their parents here in the U.S. Supposedly, they're in the care of friends and relatives already living in the United States. But they're estimating that it could actually be several hundred. And these parents are just abandoning the kids here. Now, some 600 detained migrants are already pregnant and will bear citizen children, anchor babies. Now, the interesting thing about this, it's just sort of assumed that a baby born in this country to parents who are illegal immigrants should be given citizenship. But in point of fact, there's no actual law that says that. And the Supreme Court has never ruled on it. It doesn't actually say that. The birthright citizenship is for legal Americans, or those who have already gone through the legal immigration process. Just stepping over the border and plopping out a child should not be a way to bypass the immigration system, and yet it's being used that way. Now, TV news, of course, is selling this whole idea of those poor illegal immigrants. We've got to take care of them. And apparently, people are keeping track again. The Media Research Center was keeping track of evening news broadcasts by CBS, NBC, and ABC. And since January of last year, there have only been 4 stories where victims of violence by illegal immigrants are allowed to say what happened to them on TV, while 478 illegal immigrants were given time in front of the camera to make their case to stay in the United States of America. That's not fair and balanced reporting. That's proselytizing. That's propagandizing. And we got even more of it here from the Associated Press. And it's a story about this lady, Letty Stegall, who was deported earlier this year. And the story goes, her family says they will not support President Donald Trump. You know, how could they do that? I mean, she had a U.S. Social Security card, which she wasn't supposed to. and she basically was arrested on a DUI charge. But that was all the way back when Obama was president. So this whole deportation process started under Obama, not Trump. And it isn't until the 24th paragraph in the story that AP mentions that little tiny detail. And most people reading the newspaper, they usually just read the top 3 or 4 paragraphs to get the gist of the story. And that's what's going on. Okay, okay, we apparently lost our internet connection for a few seconds. Well, I'm just going to move on here to the rest of the stories. Now, Senator Gillibrand was up at the Aussie Fest in New York City, and she grabbed the microphone and said the first thing Democrats should do if they regain the House and Senate after the midterms is get rid of ICE. They're just announcing. Tucker Carlson's right. They don't believe in such a thing as citizenship or borders. They just want anybody who's going to vote for them to come on into this country freely. And then after they're voted back into power, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to take care of all the illegals who voted for them by putting more taxes on the legal citizens. You heard it from Elizabeth Warren, a 50% tax hike. Now, a Guatemalan national living in the U.S. illegally has pled guilty to driving drunk and causing a fatal crash that took the lives of Indianapolis Colts linebacker Edwin Jackson and his driver. So if you're a Colts fan and you're wondering why he's not out there, you can thank the open border people for that one. Now, Border Patrol agents have arrested a Daca recipient for reportedly engaging in human smuggling. And the arrest followed a high-speed pursuit after the Mexican national refused to stop at an immigration checkpoint. So they basically saw this 2012 Mazda 6 attempting to avoid inspection by circumventing the checkpoint on July 21st. And when agents attempted to stop the Mazda, the driver failed to yield and led agents on a chase that ended south of Dilley, Texas. This is a Daca recipient. They're coming on here, taking advantage of the programs, and still going right back to doing what they were doing before. And by the way, I hate to be cruel about it, but I know a lot of these illegal immigrants are coming here to the United States with this idea that once they're in America, they will be living like Americans. They will live American lives. But if you go to the areas where the illegal immigrants are living, it hasn't happened. They've gone back to living as they did in their home country. Now you think about that one for a while here. Meanwhile, while the focus is on Mexico, more and more concern is starting to grow at the Canadian border, where Immigration and Customs Enforcement have discovered a very professionally run human smuggling operation. This isn't just a bunch of people going through the woods at night. They're apparently got good intelligence. They've scouted the Border Patrol people. They know where the Border Patrol agents are. The Border Patrol is saying this is the varsity team, and these illegal immigrants are paying these smugglers up to $4,000 each. And the reason more and more illegals are coming through Canada is because Canada does not require a visa to fly into Canada from Mexico. So they fly on in, hey, I'm here to get some maple syrup, and then they get on over to that border between Vermont and Quebec, and they come across. Now, I want to remind everybody that President Eisenhower literally shut all of this illegal immigration down. It was called Operation Wetback, which the politically correct people today would scream was racist and insensitive. And he did it with only 1/10 of the resources Donald Trump has. But then Eisenhower didn't have to deal with governors and mayors who were openly defiant of Title VIII. Eisenhower didn't have to deal with people who were out there trying to equate the open borders with the anti-slavery movement. or comparing immigration and customs enforcement to ISIS. This is a major problem. Our country is being dissolved, diffused. And I know that's part of George Soros' agenda, that no nation state really think about its borders anymore, that it no longer have a unique cultural identity or historical identity, that we're all made to forget our past, that we're all made to be constantly afraid. Over in Greece, illegal migrant arrivals have surged 122%. 7,000 were intercepted on the Turkish border last week. So arrivals are increasing as people smugglers exploit the Greco-Turkish land border marked by the river Evros, which is not covered by the EU deal. So they're just pouring on in. This is going to, I'll tell you how this is going to end. And I'm not advocating anything, I'm merely making a prediction. You're going to start seeing the indigenous people of these countries start to fight back. Because these incoming refugees and illegals, they're bringing crime with them. And the government isn't doing anything to stop it. And indeed, the corporate media is trying to keep it all hushed up. But at some point, the problem will be so great. We're going to start seeing vigilante groups. We're going to see bloody fighting in the streets of Europe and the United States, all because of George Soros' dream of a one-world government. Now, Steve Bannon has come up with an idea. He's going to try and set up a Soros-styled non-governmental organization to prop up Europe's right-wing parties, the populists, the nationalists. And obviously, the liberals are out there saying, oh, this is an attack on democracy. This is an attack on democracy. No, democracy is when you have two sides in a debate and you allow the people to choose. The liberal model isn't really democratic. The liberal model is you all do what we tell you to do. And we're going to silence anybody with a different idea. And we're going to steal elections. That's the liberals' idea of democracy here. So everybody's caught up in George Soros groupthink. And I think we can see by what's already happening in Europe and here in the United States, Soros' vision for the New World Order, for the one world planet, it's not going to be what he thinks it is. He's got this idea that everybody's just going to live and work together and service the private central bank, and we're all going to hug each other and be friends and sing Kumbaya. It's not happening. History has shown ethnic groups tend to basically cluster together. Now, as you know, we're coming up on the hard deadline for the Article 50 dissolution of Great Britain from the EU. And it's the 29th of March of next year. And the EU is saying the only reason that they would grant an extension to that deadline was to accommodate a second Brexit referendum or a general election. So that appears to be the new push to have a new Brexit vote. And we know there was fraud on the last one. They just didn't fraud it enough. And they'll just double it up again here. Tony Blair is out there talking or dropping hints about a cross-party Remainer plotting to upset Brexit. And Tony Blair is urging a new political coalition to fight populism because populism is bad. This will of the people and what the people want. That's just nonsense here. So Mr. Dodgy Dossier is out there again trying to thwart the will of the British people and serve his globalist masters. Now, that shooting up in Toronto, the Canadian government is saying it's related to this guy's mental illness. There was no terror connection. But that didn't stop Fox News from saying that ISIS claimed responsibility for the deadly Toronto attack. Or at least somebody claiming to be ISIS claimed responsibility for the Toronto attack. Now look at it from the tactical point of view from ISIS. What does it really gain them? For this one guy to go on out and shoot two kids, well, one young adult, and wound a bunch of others. It wasn't a militarily significant target. It doesn't make sense. That's the part that's missing. Okay. We seem to be having some trouble with our internet connection. And I'm still there? Okay, good. Yeah. Boy, talk about third world stand here, technology. Okay. Over in Greece, we were talking about that horrible series of fires that they had, still dealing with it. And a lot of missing people there. The Greek police are saying they think there were simultaneous arsonists who set 15 blazes. Other sources are saying it's actually the Greek deteriorating electrical infrastructure and sparks from power towers started all the fires. And of course, Greece doesn't want to admit that. Going to take a commercial break. Back with the last segment of our show today after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Final segment of our program today on this Wednesday. Now, back on July 14th, over in Odessa, Texas, there was a server at this steakhouse, Khalil Kavil, and he supposedly got a receipt where his name was circled, and across the top of the receipt, "We don't tip terrorist." And Khalil posted it to Twitter, and it went viral. And he basically wrote on it, "I share this because I want people to understand that this racism and this hatred still exist. Although this is nothing new, it is still something that will test your faith." And the steakhouse actually banned the customer blame for the message. But the restaurant's corporate office actually took another look at this and determined that Khalil faked this all himself for his 15-minute of fames. And they have invited the customer back, for a free dinner. But it probably would have been better if they had investigated before they just went along with the hoax. And it's another reminder, there are a lot of hate crime hoaxes out there. In fact, it looks more and more like the vast majority of hate crimes are actually hoaxes to give some entity victimhood status, to demonize another party. Because a hate crime hoax is effectively a false flag. And there have been some doozies in the past, like the Tawana Brawley rape hoax. That destroyed careers. Now, as you know, Wolfgang Halbig and Alex Jones are in court being sued for defamation for questioning the official story of the shootings at Sandy Hook. And Alex Jones has, through his lawyers, moved to dismiss the case on what is a very good argument, saying that other reporters have had to report in ways that don't comply with the official story. And he cited Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein for the Watergate situation. And Alex Jones said, such journalism questioning official narratives would be chilled if reporters were subject to liability if they turned out to be wrong, or just subject for defamation, which is, it's a ridiculous case to begin with. But that's exactly why they're doing it. They're trying to basically chill the independent media into not questioning the official story about anything. And I know it's a jury, and I hope the jury thinks very carefully about what's going on, because this is a very important case for not just Alex Jones and not just for Wolfgang Halbig, but for the independent media as a whole. The First Amendment says we have a right to voice our opinion. And the First Amendment does not say that that opinion has to coincide with any official sources. In fact, the whole point of the First Amendment is that we are allowed to voice opinions that contradict what is officially said or what is on corporate media. That's why it's there, to protect the truth from a government and media that want you to live in a world of lies. There's the music. It's time for me to get on out of here. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please take what you learn here and share it with everybody that you know. You are all part of the independent media now, and with that comes the responsibility to just get this information out there. We are making headway against the corporate media. We have to keep up the momentum. Please donate to Republic Broadcasting. Please donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.